Not surprisingly, when we look at different regions around the world, confidence is really heavily influenced by where CEOs sit. And looking at the results by region, we can really see some interesting changes from last year. Asia-Pac continues to be the most confident region from a global economic perspective. The Middle East, at the top of the list last year, is still one of the most optimistic regions, which is interesting. However, I think it's worthy to note that this is down significantly, about 25 percentage points from last year. Obviously tied to what's happening with global crude prices, et cetera, that we're all familiar with. On the other hand, optimism in North America is on the rise, as you can see on this chart. And I think it's really important to emphasize that the CEOs who are based in Western Europe and Central and Eastern Europe are the least optimistic in terms of short-term growth. So looking at individual countries, which is always interesting, with green indicating that confidence is up from last year and red confidence down, India actually tops the list with 62% of the CEOs confident about revenue growth. And not surprising, Russia sits at the bottom of the list at only 16%. Which is really a dramatic reversal from last year when they were actually the most confident in the world looking at the past year. You know, it's really interesting to note as well, I think, that for the developed economies, the US, the UK, and Germany, confidence is actually up over the prior year. Another demonstration, I think, of the shift in confidence from the developing to the developed world. In terms of CEO confidence, for the first time, U.S. confidence levels have exceeded China. So when you look at that, I think it's a pretty interesting trend as well in terms of what's happening between the U.S. and the Chinese CEOs in terms of confidence levels of revenue growth. Without question, the decrease in Chinese CEO confidence is certainly a reflection of the plan to continue with the policies of economic reform as well as restructuring that we're all familiar with. And the idea being to deliberately slow growth to a level the authorities call the new normal is to support a more sustainable growth for the longer term. Now turning to the BRICS. Interesting scenario here. Formerly, as we all know, the powerful engines of expansion, they're now facing really different realities as each of these economies are moving in very, very different directions. And we look at the CEOs from the BRICS who feel very confident about short-term growth, all decreased from last year with the exception of India. Clearly, as we would suggest, the BRICS can no longer be treated as a single block of developing economies. Now, another important highlight, we believe, is when CEOs were asked to identify the most important countries for their organization's overall growth prospects for the first time in 5 years. That's right, for the first time in 5 years, they selected the U.S. over China. Although China was still selected by over a third of the CEOs as a territory or a country to focus on. With all of the uncertainties that business leaders face today, it's a little wonder that when we asked the survey participants to name the one capability, that's right, the one capability that tomorrow's CEOs must have, the overwhelming response was adaptability. Shifts in global economic power are changing where CEOs seek growth. Changing consumer behaviors as well as technologies are disrupting entire industries. And in the future, there's every reason to believe that the pace of change will only increase. The good news here, and we think it is good news, is that the changes CEOs are making within their organizations right now have less to do with sheltering from the economic headwinds that we've been talking about, and more about building for the future. So beyond the serious concerns about overregulation, talent, as well as technology, it's encouraging that many CEOs believe if they can adapt to this changing scenario, a host of new business possibilities lie ahead.
about how